really awesome video game.
Hey everybody, it's Game Writing 101. This video is a bit of a, I don't know, a corollary to the main course path. And I just want to talk about some recommended reading and some recommended reading habits. If you're watching these videos, you're probably somebody who's new to writing, whether you're just young and starting out and you really want this to be a career. And hopefully I'm not the only instructor you have. If you want to be a writer, go find a writing program for sure. But or you're just maybe you're wanting to change professions. You have a job, but you really want to write for games. And in this course, I'm going to be referring to some of these books. So I'll have sort of a list in the description of books that we touch on during the course, so that maybe you can go to your library or go to an online library, or if you really want to, to buy the books before we get there. It was Frank Zappa who said, if you want to have a good time, go to college. If you want to get an education, go to a library. Although he didn't say good time. I'm trying to keep this channel PG. All right. One of the things that I try to do continuously is sharpen the axe, as they say. In other words, I always try to have at least one book on my nightstand that I'm going to read through periodically, maybe even sporadically. That's going to help me become a better writer. And it's almost always learning from other writers, okay? So, for example, for television, it's surprising how many projects, long-term projects in games, especially these big free-to-play games that need lots of content, can feel like you're working on a season of television. So I found this book really good, really interesting. It was recommended to me by another game writer, Ellen Sandler. I don't believe she's any relation to Adam Sandler, but accomplished TV writer. And in that same vein, this is going back further to Sid Field. This is fascinating. It says screenplay, but it's no. Sorry. Hold on. That one's great too. Just hold on. Panishevsky. The television plays, television scripts. This was fascinating because it's his scripts and it's his commentary on them. And I hope there's more of these because I want to read more from him. He's, I think, long since passed, but he was a legendary television writer. So I'm learning from television. Okay, games is very different, but you can learn, from all these different mediums. Okay, screenplays. We're not making screenplays for sure, but you can learn something from most of these books. Sid Field, another kind of legendary writer, a screenwriter who set the tone for many, many, many screenwriters that came after him. This one was recommended to me real early on. Robert McKee is much highly regarded, story expert editor. He has done some professional work, maybe quite a bit actually, but he teaches a class. I might teach it online. I'm going to take it one day when I can, but he has for a couple decades now been this highly regarded teacher expert on just the foundations of story itself. Comic books. I actually worked on me and another writer who works in games. We did a 6-issue miniseries that we're real proud of, and this is one of the books we read before embarking on that. Limericks and more limericks. Okay. learn from the legends. One writer that we are going to talk about during this course, Brian McDonald, and has, in my opinion, excellent books. The Golden Theme and Invisible Ink. And there's Brian. He's owns some kind of a story studio in Seattle. I want to say they do like commercials, but I don't think it's quite that simple. I don't think it's quite just like he makes commercials. I think he does stories for brands and all kinds of interesting stuff and short films. I don't think you necessarily need to go and get this book, but we are going to refer to it. Specifically, we're going to refer to just a couple pages when we get to talk about characters. But I don't know, if you get this from the library or something like that. So I always have something on the nightstand that I want to read or reread that's educational for me as a writer. It's other writers talking about their work or their craft or something like that, right? Sharpen the axe. In addition to that, I always want to have something that I can grab that's like a classic. And I don't necessarily read it for pleasure. It's like drinking a V8. I don't like how they taste at all, but I know they're good for me. So every once in a while, I'll just chug one of those things down, and I feel healthier. I don't know if anyone drinks V8 because they're so delicious, but it's vegetables and it's healthy for us. So always have maybe some classics, but because the other thing I figure is if you're always, I just consume a lot of pop culture. I watch movies and Netflix, and I read the paperbacks. And so it's all just pop culture that's going in here. And it's okay. But I also think that, when everything you're getting is pop culture, it gets a little reductive after a while, because some of the best pop culture is built upon, the old classics. And in fact, when you hear some of these authors talk, they'll talk about, I think it was reading about the Sandman because the series was about to come out on Netflix, and I was getting excited to watch it, and I was reading some interview or about it, and they talked about, it's influenced by Assyrian folklore and Celtic folklore and Viking Norse mythology and like 7 other things like that. Like it's just all the old earliest stories that we have. And built upon it, that's maybe some of what helped create the Sandman comic book series. And now, when I say classics, I'm not necessarily thinking it has to be a Western, classics, and whatever you consider a classic. Maybe Journey to the West, Chinese folklore, or maybe there's African folklore that you want to go back and read, and there's books like this. This was a tough read. It was pretty dense for me. I had a hard time getting through it. I'll be honest, but I'm gonna read it again. It's Aristotle, and talking about his philosophy on storytelling and drama, and I don't know. Right, and I'm reading Robert Louis Stevenson. I don't know if he's considered one of the great classic authors, but I didn't know this, but he wrote poems that were highly thought of. So poetry, read something that's good for you. It's the V8 for the brain, and then always something to read for fun. Right now, I'm really my wife got me Tanya French. Boy, I know I'm kind of late to the party, but if you like mystery and thrillers, boy, is she good. So that's my fun book. What else should you do? Obviously, you should play games. That's a tougher one if you're on a budget, because it's not like the library where you can go and rent them for free, all right? Or we're not supposed to anyway. But you can play games. And anytime you hear about, oh, this game was so insanely well written, it was so great, I try to make every effort to play it. Story-centric games. So that you're, when you start, looking for a job, and they ask you what games have, it's going to come up in any interview. What games do you play, or where you think the story's really great? So you got to be able to have a conversation. You got to be able to have a conversation about that. I expect that's not going to be a big problem for people who, if you're watching this video, you'll probably play a lot of games. But don't forget to read, and maybe get those Brian McDonald's books, at least from the library, and maybe read through them in advance of this course. And yeah, that's all I have to say about that. Okay, let's go. Let's do it. Let's get into it.